Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Valenzuela Live, your Facebook live streaming class. I am Paulo R. Alarde, your grade 6 mathematics live stream teacher for the day. We are now on the fifth week of the fourth quarter. And for today's objective, based on the DepEd's most essential learning competencies, at the end of the lesson, you should be able to solve routine and non-routine problems using data presented in a pie graph. But before we proceed to our lesson today, which is all about solving routine and non-routine problems presented in a pie graph, let's first have a quick review of the last week's discussion. Last time, you are taught and you have learned on how to construct and interpret pie graph, or also known as the circle graph. Pie graph or circle graph is a type of graph that is often used to describe a set of data. It is used to show the relationship of the parts to the whole and to each other. This is how a circle graph looks like. The circle represents the whole or the totality. The circle graph also has its title to determine what graph is all about. Let's say that the title of this graph is Rivera's Family Monthly Expenses. In a pie graph, the circle is divided into parts according to the percentage of each category. The percent, which shows what part of a whole is represented, are called sectors, while the names of the categories such as education, food, utilities, savings, and others are what we call the labels, which can also be shown in a form of a legend. So that is what a pie graph is. Pie graph can also be illustrated this way. Sometimes a pie graph looks like a circle divided into parts, like the first illustration. But it could also be like this circle, a three-dimensional circle graph. Okay, so now that you know what pie graph is and how it is being used and what is its purpose, now we are going to recall on how to construct a pie graph. So Rivera's family has a monthly expenses as follows. Okay, so as you can see, 9,000 pesos for the food, 1,800 pesos for the transportation, 2,700 pesos for utilities, and 4,500 pesos for other miscellaneous. The first thing that we have to do is to organize the data. So how are we going to organize the data? You can organize the data by creating a table. You need to know what important facts you would need to see in your graph. Okay. So Rivera's family would like to create a pie graph of their monthly expenses. So, in the first column, we are going to write down all the type of expenses, or what we call the categories, which are the food, the transportation, utilities, and miscellaneous. And for the next column, let us write down the corresponding amount spent for each category. 9,000 is spent for the food, 1,800 for the transportation, 2,700 for the utilities like electricity, water, and 4,500 for miscellaneous. Now, on the third column, we are going to convert each amount into percent form to determine what percent of a whole each category represents. But before that, it is important to know the total amount spent for all the expenses. So by adding or summing all the expenses, we will get 18,000 pesos. 9,000 plus 1,800 plus 2,700 plus 4,500 is equal to 18,000 pesos. Now, let's add another column again, the third column for the percent. To convert each amount to percent, we need to divide the amount of each item by the total expenses and multiply it by 100. So this is the percent form. So 9,000 is spent for the food. Let's start with the food expenses. So if we divide the 9,000 spent for the food by the total amount, which is 18,000, so that would be 9,000 divided by 18,000. And 9,000 divided by 18,000 could be simplified into 1/2. So 1/2 or 1 divided by 2 in decimal form is 5/10. And when we multiply 5/10 by 100, so 5/10 times 100, it'll give you 50. So 9,000 is 50% of 18,000 or 50% of the total expenses of Rivera's family. Now, let's move on to the second expenses, which is the transportation. Transportation is 1,800, and if we divide it by 18,000, so that would become 1,800 divided by 18,000, and if we simplify it, it'll give you 1/10, and 1/10 is 0.1 in decimal form, and 0.1 times 100 is 10. So 1,800 is 10% of 18,000. Next, for the utilities. Utilities, the amount spent for the utilities is 2,700. So 2,700 divided by the total amount, which is 18,000. And it could be simplified into 3/20. And 3/20 is what in decimal form? Right. It is 1,500s. And 1,500s, when multiplied by 100, will give you 15. So, 2,700 is 15% of 18,000 pesos. And for the last expenses, which is the miscellaneous, 4,500 divided by 18,000, it could be simplified into 1/4. And 1/4 in fraction form and change it into decimal form will give you 2,500s or 0.25. And when we multiply it by 100, it will give you a product of 25. So 4,500 is 25% of 18,000. And as you can see, or as you notice, the total sum of the percent here, 50 plus 10 plus 15 plus 25, is 100%. Okay, so now that we know the percent of each category, it is now time to construct a pie graph of the following data. This is the pie graph of the monthly expenses of Rivera's family monthly expenses. This is how the pie graph will look like. Okay, so 50% is spent for the food, 10% for the transportation, 15% for the utilities, and 25% for the miscellaneous. So by just looking at it, you can easily compare each category from each other. And you will also be able to answer some problem about the pie graph. Like for example, what if I ask you, which has the largest allocation? Okay, by just looking at the pie graph, you will know that the expenses with the largest allocation would be for the food. Okay, next. What if I ask you which has the least allocation? By just looking at the figure or at the graph, you will know that the expenses that has the least allocation would be for the transportation, which is just the 10% of their monthly expenses. And another one, what if I ask you what percent is spent for utilities? Okay, it is also stated and can be seen on the pie graph. So utilities, or the percent that is spent for utilities is 15%. Okay, so this time, we are going to solve some routine and non-routine problems using the data presented in a pie graph. Okay, so I will be showing you some data and a pie graph, and then we will try to solve some problems. Okay, so this is the problem. The school has allotted a budget worth 50,000 pesos to buy new books for the next school year. The librarian has this circle graph to show the type of books that are needed to buy. The question is, or the problem is, how much money should be spent on each type of book? So how are we going to solve for this problem? Okay, so as you can see, the circle graph shows that 11% of the allotted budget must be spent for the mathematics books, while 21% of the allotted budget must be spent for the history books, and 15% must be spent for the science, 11% for biography, 9% for geography, 18% for fiction, and 15% for the reference. So, how are we going to solve for this problem? Okay, the first and foremost, of course, let us first understand the problem. So by understanding the problem, you have to know what is being asked. Okay, what is being asked in the problem? So on the problem, you are asked of how much money should be spent on each type of book. So you can answer it this way. So what is asked? The amount that should be spent on each type of book. Now, after knowing what is being asked in the problem, we also have to know what are the given facts or the given information that can be seen or that is stated in the problem. So this information will help you solve the problem. Okay, so what are the given facts here or that you can see in the pie graph? So mathematics is 11%, history is 21%, science is 15%, biography is 11%, geography is 9%, fiction is 18%, reference is 15%, and of course, 50,000 pesos budget allocation. So these are the given information or the given facts that you have to take down. Okay. Next one, after knowing or understanding the problem, you have to make a plan. Okay, so we have to make a plan. So what would be our plan? So know what operation or strategy should be used to solve the problem. What do you think is the operation or any strategy that should be used to solve the problem? You are asked of how much money should be spent on each type of book. So there will be how many answers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There will be 7 answers in this problem. Okay, so what is the strategy? Okay, to solve the problem, we have to get the percentage of each type of book. Okay, Again, we have to get the percentage of each type of book. Now, how are we going to get the percentage, or what is the formula for solving the percentage? So the percentage is P equals B times R, where P stands for the percent, B is the base, and R is for the rate. Now, what do you think would be the number sentences, or what are the number sentences in this problem? Okay. Let us first identify. The formula is P equals B times R, where P is the percentage, B is the base, and R is the rate. Our B, or our base, would be the total allocated budget, which is the 50,000 pesos. What about the rates? There will be different rates for each type of book. Okay, for mathematics, it's 11%. For history books, it's 21%. For science books, it's 15%. For biography, it's 11%. Geography is 9%. And fiction is 18%. And the reference is 15%. Now, the number sentences are, for mathematics, that would be P equals 50,000 times 11%. For history, that would be P equals 50,000 times 21%. For science, that would be P equals 50,000 times 15%. For biography, P equals 50,000 times 11%. Geography is P equals 50,000 times 9%. Fiction is P equals 50,000 times 18%. And for reference, we have P equals 50,000 times 15%. Let's try to solve it. Let's start with mathematics books. Since our number sentence is P equals 50,000 times 11%, when you are multiplying a number by a percent form, the first thing that you have to do is to change the percent form into a decimal form. So 11% is what in decimal form? Okay. So let us change it into decimal form. So it will give you 11 hundredths. Or you can write it as 0.11 and read it as 11 hundredths. So P equals 50,000 times 11 hundredths. And when we multiply it, it will give us a product of 5,500 pesos. So that means that 5,500 pesos should be spent for mathematics textbooks. Now, let us move on to the history. For the history books, so the number sentence for history books is P equals 50,000 times 21%. Change 21% into decimal form. That is 0.21 or 21 hundredths. So 50,000 times 21 hundredths, that would be 10,500 pesos. Next one, for the science. So the number sentence for science is P equals 50,000 times 15%. And 15% in decimal form is 15 hundredths or 0.15. And when we multiply it, the product is 7,500. For biography, the number sentence is P equals 50,000 times 11%. Change 11% into decimal form, that is 11 hundredths. And when we multiply it, it'll give us a product of 5,500. For geography, P equals 50,000 times 9%. What is 9% in decimal form? Is it 9/10 or is it 9 hundredths? Okay, so 9% is 9 hundredths. So 50,000 pesos times 9 hundredths. Okay, so P equals 4,500 pesos. For fiction, we have 50,000 times 18%, and 18% is 1800s in decimal form. So 50,000 times 1800s is 9,000 pesos. So 9,000 pesos is spent for the fiction books. And for the last reference books, the number sentence is 50,000 times 15%, and 15% in decimal form is 1500s. And when we multiply it, it'll give us a product of 7,500. So 7,500 is the amount that should be spent for the reference books. So here are our answers. So for mathematics, we have 5,500, history 10,500, science 7,500, biography is 5,500, geography is 4,500, fiction is 9,000, and for the reference books is 7,500. Remember that we are solving for the amount that should be spent for each type. So there should be 7 answers in here because there are 7 types of the books. So if you want to make sure if your answers are correct, you can do checking. So how are you gonna check? You can check it this way. So you can add all the amounts spent for each type of book, which is 5,500 for math, 10,500 for history, 7,500 for science, 5,500 for biography, 4,500 for geography, 9,000 for fiction, and 7,500 for reference. If the total amount of these amounts does match the total allocated budget, which is 50,000, then it means that your answers are correct. So what is the sum of these? Okay, 50,000. So that's one way of checking if your answers are correct. Okay, let's now move on to the second problem. So, as you can see, there is already a presented tabular data and a pie graph. So, the problem here is to find the angle measure for each section in the given table and with the given graph. Okay, so the first column has the favorite sports, and the second column has the percent form, or the number or the percent that the percent for each category. Okay, so it is also the graph of the given data is also shown at the right. Okay, so now how are we going to solve for the angle measure of each type of sports? Okay, so this is the answer. So to find the angle measure of each type of sports, first change each percent to decimal form. And after changing it to decimal form, multiply it by 360 degrees. What is the 360 degrees? Where did it come from? Okay, 360 degrees is the number of degrees in one revolution of a circle. Okay, let's try. So on the first column, we have the favorite sports. On the second column, we have the percent form. And on the third column, we have to write the percent form, the following percent form, and change it into a decimal form. So for the basketball that gets 40%, it could be written in decimal form in 4/10 or 40/100s. While for the 20%, it could be written in decimal form as 2/10. For the tennis, which is 5%, it could be written in decimal form as 5/100s or 0.05. For the swimming, 10% could be written as 1/10 or 10/100s. For the badminton, which is 15%, it could be written in decimal form as 1500s. And for the soccer, which is 10%, it could be written as 1/10. Now, let us put another column for the angle measure of each type of sports. Okay, let's try to solve it. For basketball, we have to multiply 40% by 360 degrees, or the decimal form, which is 4/10 by 360 degrees. And when we do it, after multiplying it, we will get a product of 144 degrees. So 4/10 times 360 is 144 degrees. What about for the volleyball? For the volleyball, we have 2/10 times 360 degrees, and that would give us a product of 72 degrees. What about for the tennis? Okay, tennis, which is 0.05 in decimal form, times 360, and that would give us a product of 18 degrees. For the swimming, we have 1/10 times 360 degrees equals 36 degrees. For the badminton, we have 15 hundredths, or 0.15 times 360, and the product is 54 degrees. And for the last sports, which is soccer, that is 1/10 times 360 degrees is 36 degrees. So we can now write the following angle measure for each type of sports. For the basketball, we had 144 degrees. For the volleyball, we have 72 degrees. For the tennis, we have 18 degrees. And for the swimming, we have 36 degrees. For the badminton, we have 54 degrees. And for the soccer, we have 36 degrees. And what have you noticed about the angle measure? Okay, so the total of the angle measure is 360 degrees. So 360 degrees, again, is the degree measure of one revolution of a circle. So this is the pie graph of the given table. So the favorite sports, we have basketball 40%, we have volleyball 20%, tennis 5%, swimming 10%, badminton is 15%, and soccer 10%. So this is how the pie graph will look like. Now, by just looking at the table alone, or by just looking at the pie graph, you will be able to answer some of the problem or the questions with regards to this table and to this circle. Okay, let's say for example, question number 1. Which sport is the most popular? Okay, by just looking at this, you will know that the most popular sport is basketball. What about for question number 2? Which do you think is the sport is the least popular? Okay, by just looking at the pie graph, you will know that the least popular is tennis. Question number 3. Which two sports received the same number of votes? Okay, which do you think are the two sports that received the same number of votes? We have 40%, 20%, 5%, 10%, 15%, and 10%. So there are two sports that have the same percent form, which is 10%. So the answer is swimming and soccer. Now, question number 4. Which two sports received 3/5 of the total votes? Any guess? Which do you think? What is 3/5 of the total vote? What do you think is the 3/5 of the total vote? 3/5 in decimal is what in percent form? 3/5 is 0.6 in decimal, right? Or 6/10. Now, 6/10 is what percent or what in percent form? That is 60%. So the question is, which two sports receive 60% of the total votes? So the answer is, obviously, there are only two sports that could give a 60% vote, and those are basketball and volleyball. So that's how we solve problem based on the given data in a pie graph. So to wrap up our lesson for today, remember that pie graph is used to compare parts of a whole. Understand the problem when you're solving any problem, not just about pie graph. Understand the problem by picturing what it says and knowing what are being asked and what are the given information. And remember that the whole circle represents the total frequency or the total population. And to find the angle measure, change each percent into decimal and multiply it by 360 degrees. 360 degrees is the number of degrees in one revolution of a circle. So that would be all for today. For your homework, on your learning packets, Mathematics 6, answer what's more. Roman numeral number 1, try this. And Roman numeral number 2, keep up trying. So that would be all for today. Thank you everyone for listening. Have a great day ahead.